Welcome back to the DreamState Livin podcast. We just wrapped up. I'm here with Mike Rosenfeld, and this was an absolute pleasure, guys. You're going to want to listen to this through because we made this effective. Mike is a neuroscientist, and his story, which you guys are going to learn about over the next 40 minutes or whatever it was, is fascinating. And one thing I love about you, Mike, is your vulnerability. You delivered today with vulnerability, and this is one thing that we get into, guys. So this is going to be a masterclass in Dharma and neuroscience and what we go into. Mike has worked with some of the top athletes in the world, not to mention Jamie Foxx, some of these tennis players, I have trouble saying their name, Novak Djokovic,
yes.
And wonderful. Many more. But you guys are going to want to tune into this one. So thank you for your time today, Mike.
It was an honor to speak with you. You're doing amazing work yourself, and I really appreciate you having me. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
Boom. Enjoy.
And I did that for around 8 years, wrote the curriculum, wasn't really happy with the level of integration, and created my own called Centrada, which is specifically flow state psychology.
It's flow state psychology?
Flow state psychology, like the one I'm doing called The Next Win.
Yep.
Or it's Wachuma. I like working with heart medicine, just to bring out that authentic voice. And then from there, it's about wiring the mind and nervous system to support the truth.
So you start with Wachuma, and that kind of opens the heart, and then you introduce the flow state psychology?
Exactly. So like if you look at, the way I learned it, and it's been like 15 years since I learned it this way, but it really is a powerful framework, is that we have 4 different components to us. We have spirit, which connects us all to each other like one body. You're the liver, I'm the kidney. We're not here to be each other. We're here to know ourselves and then to optimize. And the way to know ourselves is the second part of us, which is our heart. That's our truth. Can't be convinced. Can convince the mind, which is the third, but we can't convince the heart. But the mind is just a program, and it's been programmed, and it's continuously being programmed. And so the idea is to tune into that authentic whisper and then realign the mind with the heart. And then the last is the body, which is like the dashboard of a car. And it tells us when we're in alignment or out of alignment, when we're in resonance or we're in dissonance. And so we start with Wachuma. And the way the ceremony is there's 3 parts to it. The first part, we start in a maluka. But the maluka is literally, it's like the coolest thing I've ever seen. It's outdoor. There's no roof. And it's literally in Sacred Valley, Peru, in the mountains, right?
I've been to Sacred Valley multiple times.
And so it's like, this place is insane. And so we start there, and as we take the medicine, like the music is playing, the Taita is doing his thing, and then I come in and I do a breath work that leads people into the heart. And from the heart, it's just learning how to listen. And there's a prayer called love. I can tell the story on the podcast if you're interested in that kind of approach.
We're rolling.
We are rolling.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a perfect way to get into it.
Yeah, here we go. And so when I was 14 years old, I was incarcerated. And at that point, I was already in a gang. And my role in the gang was to bring girls. And so I had a nickname, Choo Choo. So by the time I was 14, I was very promiscuous, let's put it that way. And here I am, locked up for 2.5 years. And the first 6 months, I'm going crazy. There's no TV, there's no radio, there's no computers, there's no phone at 14. And I found a way to break out. And I broke out, and I ended up going to Center City, Philadelphia. And the idea was to meet a girl, hook up, sneak back in. And I did. I met a girl, we went to the bathroom, and started kissing, and then security came, and she freaked out, I freaked out. She went one way, I went the other. And all of a sudden, as I'm walking back to go onto the SEPTA, the train, this guy asked me if I want to buy some drugs. And I'm like, no, I want to hook up. I said it differently, right? He was like, I got you. And he takes me to the projects of North Philly. And this girl, she must have been my age, 14, 15, comes in. And for $5, I had sex with her. When I went to sleep with her, the condom broke. And I ended up doing it anyway, several times. And then I end up going back to my program, and I'm bragging to my best friend, my roommate. And as I'm bragging, he looks at me, he starts tearing, and he punches me in the face. He was killed, but he stood over me crying, and I'm like, what the heck's wrong with you? I couldn't tell if he was jealous, I couldn't tell what was going on. And he told me for the first time what AIDS was. I didn't know. And he told me his sister was dying of it. And this was, back in 1990. This was a long time ago. And back then, if you had AIDS, it was a 3-year death wish. And so I didn't know anything about it. So now I'm talking to the professors at my school. I'm talking to a bunch of people to learn what it is. And at that time, no one really knew other than you're dying from it. And so every time I heard of a symptom of it, I came down with the symptom. Psychosomatically, I made myself sick. But during that time, I had nowhere to go other than God, right? So here I am praying to God, reading the Bible, and freaking out. And one time I was reading the Bible, and I was like, wow, if this is who God is, I'm in trouble. I was afraid I was going to be punished. So I remember I'm crying hysterically at night, sleeping, and I was saying to God, I just want you to love me. And I kept saying, love, 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 love. Like I was obsessing over the word love. Back then I used to write hip-hop. I used to write rhymes. And I turned love into an acronym. And the idea was to ask God for guidance, ask Spirit for guidance. And then whatever comes up, the first thing, whether it's a thought, whether it's a smell, whether it's a word, whatever it was, L, listen. Just listen. And then O, observe what God is telling me. But observe it through the lens of love. In other words, like sometimes I thought of things like death, and that's scary. But instead of being scared by it, it was telling me, okay, I'm observing that death is coming up. So what relationships do I need to end? What behaviors do I need to end? V, visualize. What does my life look like when I fully honor that? And then E, express it, take action. And I did that. And when I was doing that, so many things shifted in my life. I started saying no to everything. Everything that would give me instant gratification, I said no to. If I would see gum on the floor, when we were in the mess hall where we ate, I would tell people to just go, I'll clean their trays. I just put myself completely of service. And in doing that, because there was no radio, because there was no external noise, my intuition was so sharp. I had no thoughts in my head. It was just complete presence. And I loved it. Later on, I found out I was fine and I went crazy, and that's another part of the story. But going back to Wachuma, the first part of the ceremony is where we start breathing slowly. We start connecting to our body without any judgment. And then I guide everyone to begin talking to their body, finding out where there's discomfort, finding out where there's pleasure, finding out where there's pain. And then through a process, begin to have them do the love formula. Ask their body what's going on. Ask God for guidance. L, listen. O, observe. V, visualize. E, express. And about an hour and a half after doing that process, we would then leave the Molucca and we would go for a 4-hour walk in the mountains. And we would set up at different spots. So the first part was really about connecting to ourselves. The second part was connecting to nature. And it was insane. Like the last time I was there, I just remember being able to not literally see the air, but like have reverence for the air in a way that I never had. And it was like, I'm not me without you. And the second I stop taking you in, my heart doesn't stop. I lose consciousness. So you are the key to my consciousness. And it just created like this interdependence between us and nature. And that's what the second part is about in a nutshell, just connecting. And then the third is where we set up shop. And through these beautiful exercises, we've connected to a really powerful identity. We've connected to the oneness of everything around us. And now we start communicating and intertwining one another. So there's 3 parts: self, nature, one another. And then from there, there's a lot of exercises that we do that go into identity, which is how we view ourselves, how we view the world, and how we view people viewing us. And those 3 things in large part make up our subconscious, right? Like I view me because when I walk in a room, what are people thinking about me? I don't want to think that way. No one really wants to think that way, but it's a fact. We have that awareness. And then from there, we begin to work on developing our identity. We look at the belief systems that are keeping us out of the heart identity. And then from there, we go into doing things around flow state psychology, which is transient hypofrontality. the slowing down of that inner critic, the front cerebral cortex.
Yeah.
And it's just a really beautiful process.
Yeah, I want to get into that. And I'm curious about this integration, because it seems like the three parts: you integrate with yourself,
Yep.
then you integrate with nature, and then you integrate with actual people.
Yep.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah. Starting with ayahuasca, I did ayahuasca for the first time. I sat with ayahuasca for the first time in 2004. And immediately after sitting with ayahuasca that same night, I went and smoked crystal meth. I didn't know what to do.
I love how vulnerable you are on this conversation. I really appreciate it. Even the start, I just appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. I did. I mean, at that time, I was just completely in my head. I knew everything wrong about me, or everything I perceived to be wrong about me. And then I knew how the world perceived me also. And I thought of myself as a fraud. And so here I am going through an ayahuasca ceremony, and I'm like scanning myself with that full of shit detector, right? Yep. Seeing who I'm showing up as. And I just couldn't handle it. And because of that, I went out and I smoked crystal meth. Fast forward to 2019, I was working with the founder of One Heart, and I was coaching him, and he brought me in to experience his program. And then from there, I went and wrote the curriculum. And it's a 5-star program. The issue is, after the program, I was the one that people would call when things were going south. And so people would experience this beautiful community. They would tap into a consciousness and see themselves in a beautiful way. But when they got home, the consciousness that they left still remained. And here they are in this new space, and all of the triggers are there. And if you're not taught how to rewire that, if you're not taught how to build a nervous system in that setting, it's going to create a lot of shame. And a lot of people go back into worse patterns because they say to themselves, I thought this was working. Why couldn't I keep it working? And so for me, integration is not something that's cookie cutter. It's not something that's generic. Each person has their own lives, their own program, and their own triggers. And so in the program, they're really connecting to this. But when they go back, this gets activated again. And so for me, a really strong and powerful integration is not cookie cutter. It's finger on the pulse, and it's very detailed. Because the idea is not to lose that consciousness. The idea is to train that consciousness.
It reminds me, and one thing when I first met you, there was this exercise you did in the cold, where it's not pushing it away, it's understanding and sitting with, like, this sucks. And I've been the type of guy that always sat in maybe something difficult and just be like, no, I'm a savage. Yeah. I'm a beast. I can get through this. And I would do this positive self-talk. And I thought that would be good for me. And it could maybe get me through 3 minutes in cold plunge. But can you explain what you taught us and why that could actually be not good for the wiring?
Yeah. The program is called I AIM. So I stands for identity. And then I'll take you through AIM in a moment. But the concept around it is before we can get from one place to another, we have to be honest with where we are. And I know as a young man, I boxed my whole life. I was involved in gangs. It wasn't okay to feel. And so I was always taught to suppress and suppress and suppress. And the more I suppressed, the more certain events, which has caused me to explode, right? I could hold it in. I could put on a front, but something could trigger me, and all of a sudden I'm a different person, right? And so, like, a metaphor I have is I have an 11-year-old daughter. And if she's feeling sad or anger, and I'm busy, I can say to her, go to your room, be quiet, right? But what does that solve? Nothing. It doesn't solve anything for her, and it doesn't solve anything for me. In fact, for her, she might feel a level of abandonment or even rejection, right? And for me, I'm feeling bad because even though I'm focused on something important, it's not as important as her.
Yeah.
Okay, well, she represents who we are on the inside. Maybe the little boy or little girl inside, right? And so now she's in her room and I'm on the other side of the door. And if I'm just like, what are you doing in there? And making her wrong for feeling, oh my God, what is that going to cause? There's more trauma. And so when we're feeling things where maybe we had a trauma in our life, maybe it was a breakup, maybe we messed up, whatever it is, right? If we start telling ourselves we're wrong for what we're feeling, all of a sudden we're just stuffing it deeper so that it comes out. So if I knock on the door and I say to her, honey, can I come in? At first she may be like, no, because she's in that space. And if I want to be present with myself, at first it may be hard because it's hard to feel these things, right? It doesn't feel good to not feel good. But if I go in the room and I just sit there, and she allows me to, and I just create space, I'm not trying to fix her. In fact, I'm trying to allow her to feel safe, to communicate with me. Before you know it, that presence will open her up. And as she begins to open up, then as her father, then I can listen, I can observe, and then I can allow her to feel seen and heard to the point where she's able to process it all. And then from there, we can get into, okay, well, what's important now? We just went through the processing. We just went through the whole idea of releasing. But what's important now? That's like recalibrating, okay? And then from the recalibrating, knowing what's important, then we can begin to make the internal shifts. Shifts of the breathing, shifts of the thought process, shifts of action, so that she can create new results. Well, the same thing, specifically with like an ice bath, because a lot of people are doing ice baths. When people jump in an ice bath, you see a lot of guys, they'll go in, they'll hold their breath, and they'll be like, this isn't cold, right? And it may look good on Instagram, but in the back of their mind, they're saying, you're full of shit because it's cold.
Yeah, you're freezing your ass off.
It's freezing cold. And when we lie to ourselves, we create dissonance, right? When we do that, it's like sending the little kid inside to the room and not wanting to listen. But when we can say, you know what? I'm aware that it's cold. Awareness is really important because it calms the amygdala. I accept that it's cold. It's freaking an ice bath. There's a lot of ice in it. I can accept it. If I resist the cold, it's going to take up a lot of mental space. Oh my God, this sucks, right? But when I can accept it, then I can breathe into it. And then I can say to myself, okay, I'm in this ice bath because I'm using it to train me. I'm using it to train me for the challenges in my life. So what's my intention? Now I can say my intention is to be able to, depending on what the person's intention is, my intention is to be able to train my nervous system and my mind to regulate in times of challenge. So, you know, I work with professional fighters, I work with professional athletes. I want them to be able to regulate when shit hits the fan. I want them to be able to regulate when there's only a minute left on the clock and millions of people from across the world are watching them. Right? And so that's what the ice bath is doing. And so what's important now? What's the intention? Now, okay, I know what my intention is, which means I have a bullseye. For me to hit that bullseye, am I going to think, oh no, this sucks? Am I going to think positive? Oh, this is not so bad? Or am I going to think effective? So to get from here to there, what's the effective way of thinking? Effective and positive are not the same. Positive is lying to ourselves. It's not cold, right? Or I'm going to be fine. Effective is, okay, I want to get through this. So let me focus on the breath. Let me focus on my movement, etc. And then the last part is literally the three things that most of my program focuses on, which is the breath, which is connected to the nervous system, which accounts for 70% of our metabolic waste. So we focus on our breath, because whatever we're experiencing, the psychological or emotional state that we're in is always going to affect the way we breathe. So the first thing is, I'm going to be present in the moment, because that's when the breath is happening, and I'm going to be able to regulate my breath. Now, if I regulate my breath in the ice bath and I'm freezing, what am I really doing? Nothing. Because I'm still contracted. And if I'm contracted, where's the oxygen going? Where's the blood flow? So now I want to be able to move that energy. And this, clients who are going into board meetings or something like this, or sales meetings, also do this. They move the energy. So the first thing is the breath. The second thing is the movement, and that's important to get the blood flowing and also to move the energy that's currently there. And then the last thing is what we're saying to ourselves, the thoughts. And so that was the ice bath. It's literally about not trying to convince ourselves and holding our breath, everything's fine. That works in our 20s. That works maybe early into our 30s. But when you turn 50, the body's not going to appreciate that anymore.
Yeah.
And so if we're suppressing, especially men, well, I can only speak for men, but if we're suppressing our stuff, it may get us through to achieve what we want short term, but it's going to break us down long term.
Yeah.
And there's a better way to get us through short term, and it's more sustainable long term.
Yeah, and when we can do, and thank you for explaining it like that, and when we can have this process, it seems kind of similar to Tony Robbins would talk about the forces that control your emotional state.
Okay.
He puts it in the words as a triad. So it's physiology, the body, and then language, and then focus, belief. So that's how he kind of puts this. And I've always focused on that when I'm in a really challenging experience. It's okay, body, let me get my body right. What is my language? And then where's my focus going? So when we think about an experience not in an ice bath, let's kind of just, for the listeners, someone who is going through, let's say a man that's in his 30s and he's maybe going through a divorce, something really, really tough. And he's, my breakups in my life, I feel like I get addicted to it. Like I just can't stop thinking of it. I'm addicted to this thought and I just want to control it. And I know there's someone that could be listening that's going through something really difficult. So how can we apply this concept of being in the ice bath, but to being in maybe the deepest, darkest hell you've ever been in your life, and you're trying to just get through your day?
Yeah. We're going back to flow state psychology, okay, to answer this question.
Thank you.
When we're in flow state, it's called transient, which means temporary. Hypo, which is slowing down. It's the opposite of hyper. Frontality, the front cerebral cortex. So flow state literally means the slowing down of the front cerebral cortex. Think of an athlete. There's millions of people watching. If they're in their head, they're not in the game. But when they're not in their head, their brain waves are slowed and their body produces healthy endorphins. And all that they've been practicing, they don't even have to try. It's automatic. And this is why they're knocking down every shot. This is why they're performing at the higher level, because they're not canceling themselves. So we know exactly what's going on in the body, and it's measurable when we're in flow state, right? But we also know that there are 4 channels, 4 entry points into achieving that state. One of the 4 is our thought processes, right? And an example, there's like tons of different examples of the thought processes. One of the thought processes is anything that you call bad becomes your master.
Anything that you call bad becomes your master.
Anything that you don't like, anything you resist.
It's kind of like what angers you controls you a little bit.
It's exactly that.
Okay.
Because the second you say this is bad, what's going on? Well, the amygdala is there to protect you. Your nervous system is there to protect you. And so that fires messages to your brain, which activates your front cerebral cortex. So you go into the opposite of flow, transient hyper frontality. This can also be called
anxiety. That's why you keep thinking about, we'll use the X for an example. You can't stop thinking about it because you're in transient hyper.
Yeah, you're obsessing. We begin to obsess, and we've all been there, right?
Yeah.
And there's not much worse than that. I mean, there's a lot of pain in breakups. And so, like, I get it. And so, if we want to be right, we have to ask ourselves, would I rather be right or effective? Because I can be right, but oftentimes I'm right at my own expense. And so, what's the effective way to perceive what we're going through, right? And this happens a little bit further in the process. First thing, it's the same as aim. I have an awareness, I have an acceptance. Do I want to stay in a downward spiral? Probably not. So what's my intention? Once I have my intention, this is where I start activating the 4 channels, because the 4 channels are what's going to get me there. And so anything I call an enemy or anything I call bad becomes my master. And so what do I say in this? If I can see God, or if I can see good in everything and everyone, it will speak to me through everything and everyone, including this. And so what's under this that is really going to help me not just feel better, but create what I want in my life. And so the first thing I would say is, we can't resist it. We have to have the awareness. We have to accept it. Then we have to get clear of what's important. And then we begin using the channels. And by using the channels, starting with thought process, okay, great. Now I can begin to understand that this is shaping me for something greater. Now, I can say that's positive thinking, which I'm not a fan of, like I said.
Yeah.
Or I can say, wait, this is the effective way to get what I want. And what do I want? I want to feel great. And if a relationship is important to me, whether it's with the same person down the line or if it's with someone even better, how must I think in order to get there? And then we begin to apply the other channels, which is getting clear of the identity that I want to create. So if this is really here to build me, well then, once I'm built, who will that be? How does that person think? How does that person feel? How does that person interpret information? How does that person communicate? What are the 5 sense intricates that they bring in? What kind of music do they listen to? What kind of foods do they eat? What kind of smells bring them into that space? That's one of the channels, the 5 senses. 2, thought processes. 3, okay, if I'm healing, am I going to breathe like this? No. I'm going to meet myself where I am. And I'm going to regulate my breathing. That's the 3rd. So the 1st, thought process. 2nd, 5 senses. 3rd, breathing patterns. And then the 4th, people and environment. Who should I surround myself with now? What are the right people?
This is so good.
Yeah.
Why are we addicted to being right, though? Like, I know we can go through this process and someone listening, like, okay, I'm going to do what Mike said. I'm going to implement this process. But then that thought comes up and we get into
frontality.
We get into hyperfrontality.
Yeah.
And then I just want to be right.
I think it's because we need to feel a sense of control. When we feel control,
Makes sense.
we feel safe. And control is the mechanism the nervous system uses to be able to navigate through a situation. And control doesn't always mean literally like I'm in control. It means like I know this feeling and it's safe. I don't know if you've heard the difference between base 10 and base 12 frequency. Okay. So if you think of matter, everything breaks down into energy, right? Well, frequency is the rate at which it moves, right? So the rate at which energy moves is frequency. Now, it can move like this, which is like chaotic, or it can move like this, right? Which is more structured, right? It's the same rate, but it has a different structure. The structure is base. So base is structure, frequency is rate, right? Okay. Well, we as human beings are set up to resonate in a base 12 frequency. What does that mean? When we are in base 12, we're not in a place of overwhelm, system overload, contraction, dissonance. We're in a place of infinite possibility. We're in a place of expansion. So why aren't we that way all the time? Well, it goes back to the question, why do we need to be right? Well, because we're not living in a base 12 environment. We are surrounded by base 10. What that means is everywhere we look,
so good.
Every sounds we hear are intended to create contraction. Why? For consumerism. I need this in order to look good. I need this in order to be validated. What that is saying is I'm not enough. The commercials, the music, the movies, the culture, even the education puts us in base 10. And so when we're in a base 10, we're in a place of contraction. When we're in a place of contraction, our ego, our nervous system needs to feel like it's in control.
Wow, this is so good. You know, I built this podcast around this idea of dharma. It's a Sanskrit word that means life path, life purpose. And you are the type of people I seek out who are living their dharma, living their life path, life purpose. And I want to take a step back from the beginning of this conversation. You talked about this experience when you were 14 years old.
Yeah.
And it seemed like you had this almost like mentally a near-death experience that had brought you down this a little bit of an enlightenment. And it seems like what you learned at such a young age, you've brought into your teachings now, and you're serving from that point. Am I hearing that right? Did it spark at that age of 14 when you went through that experience?
Being blunt, I tried to bribe God to keep me alive. I tried to bribe God to keep me alive.
Do you feel like you're a servant now, delivering all of this from that, or?
Do I feel like I'm God's servant? I feel like the word servant almost makes me feel like I'm only doing this because I have to. I feel like I'm in love with what I'm doing, but it's the right question for me, because later on what happened was I found out that I was healthy, right? And I went to college. And once I found out I was healthy, I went crazy. Massive drugs, became a male dancer, like just really went nuts. I ended up meeting, I was working for Seagram's, which was the parent company to Universal. And I ended up meeting the vice president of the entire company, who became my mentor. Moved me up to New York, and I went to work there. And I went to work in the music industry. And while I was working in the music industry, I made my way up the ladder pretty quickly because my mentor was the head of it all, right? But here I am, now 21 years old, and I'm marketing music, mostly hip hop. And the music that I'm marketing, although I liked it at the time, I knew it wasn't good for kids, young kids. And that's who we were targeting. And I couldn't live with myself. And so I ended up walking away from that opportunity, and I started my own foundation. But the reason I started my foundation is because I had a lot of guilt. Here I am, made a lot of money. My best friend had just been murdered. I thought I had AIDS. I went through a lot. Like, I didn't do that so I can poison the minds of kids and not have all this money in my bank account. So I started my foundation. I started my foundation because I still had a voice of, you're going to be punished. And if you don't do this, you'll lose your life. This is what I believed. I'm not there anymore. I went through 10 years even running my foundation of cocaine addiction. I got to a place, it's a cool story for another time, but I got to a place where I realized through DMX that everything that I've been through was something that I needed to see in order to become who I'm meant to be. Those are his lyrics. And so I went from like, I'm a piece of junk, I'm a hypocrite, I'm a fraud, to no, I'm not. I've just been behaving that way.
Yeah.
And once I realized that, that inner critic began to change his voice to the voice of an inner wise one that guided me. And so now I don't feel like I have to do this to serve God. I feel God is love, and love is just moving through me, and I'm passionate about doing it. Which takes me to one last point on the topic. I don't believe, just to consider, and it's just language, right? I believe we all have the same purpose. People say, what's my purpose? I think that question is confused with what's my mission. Your purpose is to be you. The liver's here to be the liver. The kidney's here to be the kidney. We're here to be ourselves. Who am I? Well, you're not going to find it here. You'll find it when you slow this down and listen here. And this is not happening in the past like this lives, and it's not happening in the future like this lives. It's now. And if I were to say now my purpose is to run a program for kids, I have no interest in that anymore. Not that I don't love kids, but it ran its course. So my purpose is to be me, and when I calm my mind down and I listen to that authentic whisper, I can lock in to what my next mission is. And that's the program I was telling you about, the next win.
Yeah.
What's your next win? What's your next
this is
mission?
incredible. This fires me up so much.
Let's go.
I think about this question a lot because this is what this podcast is built around, this life path, life purpose. And I work with a lot of people in my program, and I'm like, I want to help you find out like what it is that you're here for. And people put themselves in a box like, I'm here to start a foundation for kids. I'm like, in 10 years, you might not want to do that anymore. And you're better off serving somewhere else. So you have to be open to the changes. And I want to bring up something really important for the listeners as well, because you're such a great example, Mike, of of finding your purpose and living your dharma, because you went through this crazy amount in your life. And you just said you were 21 years old, you started this foundation. Well, the next 10 years you were addicted to cocaine. And you know what, there's a lot of people listening that think their time is up, and they're in their 30s, they're in their 40s, and they feel like it's too late for them. They feel like they maybe messed up in their 20s, they messed up in their 30s, and they're giving up, and they're just sticking to a normal 9-to-5 job, and they're just, it's past my time, I missed my shot. What would you say to them?
Just getting started, if you want.
If you want.
If you're ready. But it's very hard to believe that, because we have these pains and these traumas: abandonment, rejection, humiliation, injustice. We have these things that we go through. And those things create thought processes that get ingrained in our subconscious. And so how do we get rid of that? Well, we have to really want to know who we are. Because if we don't have that, we have that fire. The fire's here, the heart, right? If we don't feed and fan that fire, the belief system is going to dominate. And you may say you're too old, and you'll be right. Not because it's true, but because you began to believe it's true. But if you begin to feed that fire and really put the energy and say, I'm not who I was yesterday, who am I? And get excited and curious about that, then the next step is the critical step. We block our blessings because we believe we don't deserve them. Whatever we did, whatever we didn't do, we didn't deserve, we don't deserve it. And so for those who are listening, if you want to stop blocking your blessings, it's time to know that you deserve them. How do you deserve them? This is what must begin now. The word deserve has two parts. D-E, which means from, serve, service, of service. When we are of service, we get out of our head and we stop sabotaging. But a lot of us try to be of service to others, which is not bad, which is good. But if I'm of service to others, but I'm neglecting myself, I might be in a situation where there's great opportunity and I can't see it. Or I might be in a situation where, hey, listen, there's great opportunity. Maybe it's with a partner, maybe it's with a financial or career opportunity. But I say to myself, subconsciously, you know what? I can't even love me. Why would they want to work with me? I can't even love me. Why would she invest in me? And so the key is to radically become of service to ourself. What that means is not saying I love myself. If I say I love myself, there's another voice that comes in and says, bullshit. Remember when you did this, this, and that? What I say is I'm loving myself. Because in every second I have an opportunity to be loving, the ing of it all, the verb of it. And so if I'm taking a second now to regulate my nervous system, that's an act of loving. And the more I do these acts of loving, the more I start to say to myself, wow, I'm really caring for myself. The more I start to feel it, the more I start to have more energy, and the more I start producing from that area. And then all of a sudden, 15 years ago, 17 years ago now, there's an area in Miami called Overtown. It's the ghetto. I was on Oprah Winfrey. And
you were what?
I was on Oprah. Mm-hmm. And I was high on the show. It was during my addiction. And that same night, I'm laying in the street in Overtown. If you would have asked me that particular night if I would be working with some of the best athletes and celebrities and companies in the world in a few years, there would have been a part of me that says yes, because the fire was there. But this part, at that point, would have been like, I missed my chance. It's not true. As soon as I became of service to me, things began to open up. And it happens quickly. It happens quickly.
Yeah. And this is coming from a guy that was addicted to cocaine throughout your 20s. You told us this story when you were 14, and now you're working with some of the top athletes in the world. Jamie Foxx, This is just incredible.
Yeah.
Can you tell that story of, and excuse me if I get his name wrong, the tennis player, Jovovic?
Novak Djokovic.
Novak Djokovic.
Yeah.
I love how you tell this story, but when you said you're never going to be as good as.
So I was working with another tennis player at the time. This was back in 2014. And this particular day, I will always say that this is one of my favorite days of my life, one of the best days of my life, because first and foremost, even bigger than that, was that it's the day that I found out that I'm having a baby. And so, like, anyone who knows me, they know my daughter, and we're super close, and she's my world. And I found out that I was having my daughter. That same afternoon, after finding out, I went down to the Miami Open, and I was scheduled to work with Novak Djokovic. It was the night before the finals for the 2014 Miami Open, where he was going to be playing Rafael Nadal the next day. For me, when it comes to whether it's sports, whether it comes to business, whether it comes to life, there's different parts. For sports, there's your athleticism and there's your technique. You can have all the athleticism in the world, but if you have no technique, you're not going to be good. You can have all the technique in the world, but if you can't keep your breath in place, or if you have no coordination, that doesn't matter. But you can have all the technique and athleticism, but if you get out into the court and you freak out, none of that matters. And so for me, it's all about mindset. And in order to be in the right mindset, we have to know ourselves, right? Okay. So knowing that and having trained that through neuroscience, the second I saw Novak Djokovic, I walked over to him. We were introduced. And I looked at him, and I didn't plan this. It was really cool. I looked at him and I said, "You're never going to be as good as Rafael Nadal." And he looked at me like I was crazy. Took a pause, not a long one. I said, "You're never going to be as good as Rafael Nadal at being Rafael Nadal." The reason we get upset, the reason we explode, is because we suppress our shadow or the parts of us that we don't like. And unless we can integrate all of who we are, we're only going to be a fraction of ourselves. And so the name of the game is connecting to your authentic power. Wow. And that's where my work with him began.
That's incredible. And I to segue into something else that I want to talk about. So with that is comparing ourselves to other people. Novak is comparing himself to Rafael Nadal. It's maybe why you said that. And by the way, flow state psychology, that was total flow state for you, most likely, because this just came up from the ether, and you say this powerful, powerful one-liner on the best day of your life,
100%.
Which is awesome. Now, what do you think this overindulgence our society is with social media doing to this flow state and doing to this I call them the twin thieves, the twin thieves are the thief of comparison, comparing ourselves to other people, and the thief of joy. So the two thieves of joy, comparison and just negativity.
Yeah. So what do I think that social media's role is in that?
Yeah, how do you feel like social media is taking us out of flow state, if you will?
Well, I mean, transient hypofrontality, flow state, slowing down of this, right? I know Mark Zuckerberg was just testifying, I think, about a week and a half ago, because Facebook, I think, was being sued. Facebook was being sued by a woman because she believes that she became addicted to Facebook, which is likely true. But what she was claiming is the reason she became addicted is because Facebook, Instagram, all of these social media outlets are literally investing millions, if not billions of dollars for what's called user experience. User experience is keeping us glued to the app. And so what do they use? They use notifications. They use a lot of different things to activate dopamine so that we keep scrolling, right? Okay, so if I wake up in the morning and I'm in a very fertile time between my conscious and subconscious, this is a really beautiful time to create. But the first thing I do is I grab my phone. What's that doing? That's activating dopamine, and now my mind is going in whatever story I just saw, right? I am giving away my power to whatever's on the screen. Not only am I giving away my power to whatever's on the screen, I'm giving away my power to the device in and of itself, because it is eliciting a reaction. just how you shook my hand, we have triggers, right? You didn't say, you know what, Mike's about to shake my hand, I'm going to shake his hand. Something happened that caused a reaction. We turn on the phone, something happens that causes a reaction. And before you know it, we go into our mind. It completely takes us out of flow state. It completely takes us out of flow state. Flow state is transient hypofrontality, the slowing down. Now what we're doing is we're literally putting ourselves in our head.
Yeah.
That's 10 base. Puts us in 10 base, takes us out of 12.
And if you're in your head, you're dead. And a lot of people are just walking zombies because of these devices.
Yeah.
With your retreats, can you elaborate on these and what it is that you do? I know we started with a little bit, but I want to wrap up and go into some details with what you do with your retreats so people can get involved and get some more of you.
Thanks, man.
Of course.
So it's called Centrada. And Centrada just means to return to center, to return to this. And so the next one is called The Next Win. And that's specifically for professional athletes who have retired. And the idea behind that, and everyone can relate, we get to a certain point in our life in an identity. For them, they made it to the NFL or professional boxing or tennis as a world-class athlete. But then they hit their 30s, maybe 40s. And it's like their heyday's over. This is what's common. This happens. Like if you look at the statistics of what percentage of athletes go into depression after they're done competing, it's like it's skyrocketed, right? And so they had a win to get to there. Michael Jordan told them to just do it. They did it, but it's time to do it again. And so the next win really helps them connect back to the heart so that they can rewire their mind, their nervous system for the identity that they're being called and excited about creating. That's the foundation for all of the retreats. Depending on who comes, what's the demographic for the particular retreat, we may use different modalities. Always flow state psychology, not always plant medicine.
Okay. Yeah. Now, if someone's not a professional athlete, can they still have access to your retreats?
Yeah, we have plenty of retreats, not just for professional athletes. We have retreats that have founders, we have executives, we have moms, we have dads, everyday people. And so all of our retreats are really open. The ones that are not open are the ones specific to the celebrities, just because they require a certain level of privacy.
Well, Mike, this was such an honor to have you. Talk about effectiveness, and this is one word you brought up before, but I think this is a good effective 40 minutes or however long it was. I like to keep these short so we can really deliver information. But
can I share one thing that I have?
Please.
So we do have a online program coming up. It's phenomenal. When we talk about anxiety, a lot of people are experiencing anxiety. Anxiety is literally the same thing as flow state, but on the opposite end of the spectrum. And so flow state, transient hypo, anxiety, transient hyper. And as I mentioned earlier, there's 4 channels that put us into flow. When you misuse those channels, it puts us into anxiety. So we have a 7-week program. It's not just for those with anxiety. It's literally there to build the identity and teach people how to live from a place of flow. So if anyone's interested in that, that's an online program and it's open to the world. And in Spanish and in English.
Spanish and in English.
Yeah.
And how do you go about the program? Is it live calls with you running them with your business partner? Or?
Yeah. So they're live calls. It's once a week for 7 weeks. It comes with a workbook. It comes with meditations. It comes with activations. It's a really amazing program. It is like all of my life's work condensed to the best of my ability, delivered for people to go through the process and come out the other side feeling at their best and living at their best.
Tap into that, guys.
Brother.
Pleasure.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, man.
Bye, guys.